Hello, creeps, and welcome to the first ever episode of The Mortuary. I am your host, Morbid Tuna, and this is where we talk about horror and related horror geekery. So, sit back and relax and listen to the review on the recent slasher film made right here, beautiful nation of Canada, called In a Violent Nature. In a Violent Nature, as I said, is a slasher. It's not what I would call a neo-slasher, just because it was made this year, but it definitely has all the elements. In fact, this is the sort of thing that I would say could even introduce a new generation to the old style of slashers we had back in the 80s and in the early 90s a little bit. Now, the interesting thing about this one, and which makes it unique, as far as I know, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but this is the first one that is shot almost entirely from the point of view of the slasher himself, not from the victim's point of view, but almost entirely just over the shoulder of this figure, this stalking doom. Traditional slasher never says anything, the silent creeping doom type, as he just goes about doing his slasher thing. So the basic plot of this one is that what kicks off the whole thing, there's got to be a catalyst. What kicks off the whole thing is that this guy had a tragic and unjust death long ago, comes back for vengeance from the grave every once in a while, and there's only one thing that can keep him quietly in his grave: this locket. This lovely locket that has to do with some other elements in the story. That's the only thing that'll do it. So, of course, what happens? Some ignorant person takes the locket, and that breaks its magical hold, and anyway, chaos and carnage ensue, which is exactly why we watch these kind of things. As I said, it's shot here in Canada, so going up there, anybody who lives here, especially in Ontario or maybe like parts of Quebec, you watch this movie and it's like this is a place you've gone camping. You've seen this before. The trees look, everything sounds like it. Like you could just, travel a couple hours and be there. And for all I know, maybe you can. I don't know exactly where it was shot, but you can tell it was Northern Ontario. It says so in the credits, too. Now, Johnny himself, that's the monster's name, by the way, is Johnny. He is definitely cut from the same cloth as our old friend, Jason Voorhees. The more perceptive and the more nerdy amongst you will notice that I'm dressed up like Jason as he appears in part 2. The first sequel, before he had the infamous hockey mask, that'll be a topic for another episode. Johnny is definitely cut from that cloth. He is definitely not of this earth anymore. He definitely has some very strong supernatural powers. He has a very similar sort of skill set. Most of the crypto undead slashers that we've seen over the years, Jason, of course, Michael being another one, with the enhanced physical strength, the seeming imperviousness to pain or just about, and this ability to regenerate himself every time he gets hit and he gets back up again, he gets hit and he gets back up, and are they ever going to get him? So yeah, he's very classic slasher. But like I say, having this over his shoulder the whole time, with no score, by the way. There is no score in this. It's just the sounds of the forest. The only music that's in it is generated by the characters themselves, people listening to a radio or watching TV or something, but there's no actual score. For a large part of the movie, it's just the sounds of the forest and the relentless thump, thump, thump of Johnny's boots as he's gradually working his way toward the hapless victims. Now, the victims are one of the things I find most interesting about this particular piece. And I say that because when you look at the kills, it's like there's a kind of kill for every horror victim. We all like a certain types of kills more than others. Some like the silent, quick, out of the darkness kill. Some like the big, drawn out, gory, splashy everywhere kill, like something you'd see in the Terrifier, or maybe one of the later sloppier Texas Chainsaw sequels. Some like the off-screen deaths. Sometimes like the startled face and then the cut of the camera, and you just know they got killed. That's what some people find the most compelling of slasher kills. But that's what I'm saying. There's a kill like that from each one of those categories in this movie. I won't give them away, but there's something for everyone. There's some gore. There's some that's very subtle. There's some where you don't even see what's going on in no particular order. And you never know which one is going to come next. Once it starts, you know, okay, that's this kind. I've seen this. Oh, wait a minute. No, I haven't. What's he doing? There's a good deal of originality in it as well. Imaginative. Again, a bit Friday the 13th with some of the very over the top, almost cartoonish kills, but still just very visceral. The thing with this also is that the whole thing unrolls at it has this feeling of like an unstoppable, this inevitable doom, like that someone was going to do this. Sooner or later, Johnny was going to be freed, because it's revealed as the film goes on that this is not the first time he's gone on a big rampage. And it really is a rampage. You know, the we've stopped him before, we'll have to stop him again thing definitely is part of it. So you've got that trope. The tropes of the slasher in this, by the way, they're present, they're not overdone really. There's a few. There's the local who knows the truth. There's the irresponsible characters. There's the more mindful characters who don't really have the guts to stand up to the annoying ones who end up, kicking off everything, getting the monster ticked off in the first place. There's the whole element of the, vengeance. There's usually a vengeance element, except with Michael. I mean, Michael Myers in the earlier ones was doing it because he was doing it, and they got into the whole revenge stuff later. This is definitely a vengeance type of slasher, and it's the one you sort of want to root for, but maybe you shouldn't. Because some of the kills, like honestly, you sit there and you're like, okay, I understand this guy's mad. Did this person really deserve that? You're sitting here like, because it's usually the less annoying characters for some reason that get the worst ones. Pacing is good. It doesn't fly right into it, but it doesn't drag too much. Kind of gets to the story, and you get to know the characters a little bit. It's not a character-driven genre that much, but you have to believe that they're more than two-dimensional, and for the most part, you do. Most of the acting is pretty good. In fact, most of it is darn good, I would say. One or two weak points there, one or two weak actors. I'm not going to say whom. There is this one point. There's this one section of the film that, despite all these good things I've said about it, this one part of it does kind of affect the rest in a negative way. So I don't want to give too much away, but here's a spoiler alert. There's going to be a spoiler. There's going to be a spoiler. Ready? Okay. Everybody doesn't want to hear the spoilers. You're all shut off. You're all logged off. You're all whatever, right? Okay, here we go. At the end of the film, the final girl, because there's always a final girl. You know that this is a rule of slasher. There's always a final girl. Sometimes a final guy too, but not often. Final girl gets away, covered in blood, shattered emotionally and all this stuff. And she has that sort of 1,000-yard stare as the kindly person who picks her up in her truck, picks her up, and she's sort of staring out the window. You can see she's kind of thinking about all the crazy shit that's happened in the last 24 hours. There's dried blood on her. She's just like, can't even believe she's still alive. The woman who picks her up just launches into this monologue. I understand why the monologue is there, but I'm not sure it had to be there at the end. Or if it did, with all due respect to the writer, like, whoever you are, I'm sorry, but that thing went on way too long. It could have been 15 or 20 seconds to kind of sum up what this character has to say in this whole denouement of everything, but it just goes on and you're sitting here like, is this the end? It feels like a weird kind of middle, like something else, and then it doesn't. Nothing else really happens. That's it. There's a giant monologue at the end, and then the credits. The final girl stares out the window and it shows a shot of the forest. The forest itself, like you can see through her perspective, the forest looks more threatening. It looks much darker and more sinister than it did before. You can tell that she's looking at it with new eyes. Even though, like, Johnny isn't actually standing right there looking at her, she kind of feels like he almost is. Like he's almost everywhere. And the way they kind of hint at that when she's running away at the end, there's a sound effect that you keep hearing, which is Johnny hacking somebody up way behind her, and he's just hacking away. It doesn't matter how far away she runs, the sound of the hacks just stays with her. It doesn't get any quieter. It's like it's inside her almost, and coming from everywhere around her. Or like it's almost coming out of the forest itself. It makes it so the forest is like another villain, like a sidekick almost. But anyways, she's staring out, and they convey that very well. That's a nice kind of, okay, yeah, he's always out there, and are they ever going to defeat him? He's part of nature itself, all that stuff. But this massive speech that comes before it, though, I'm just like, if only that weren't there. Honestly, the whole thing would just be greatly elevated. But don't let that discourage you, though, because, like I say, in general, this is a very entertaining film, paced well, written well, most of the acting is good. If I was going to compare it to anything established, obviously, Friday the 13th is the first thing that comes to mind, because it's out in the woods, isolated, the kind of camping, cottage, whatever thing, the whole vengeance idea of this unjust death and just wreaking havoc on people who now had nothing to do with it, because it's, years later. Also very Jason-y. As a matter of fact, I've read the people who made the film wanted to do a Friday the 13th. They wanted to go back to the roots of, Jason in the forest thing, but they couldn't get the rights. It was a legal thing. They couldn't get the rights to do it, so they had to change it enough so it wouldn't be Jason. It's not, Pamela Voorhees, and it's not Crystal Lake. They had to change it enough. And they changed it enough, apparently. With that in your mind, you really see, like, oh yeah, this guy totally could have been Jason. The way that they do his prosthetics and makeup effects, he brings to mind kind of like a part 6 Jason, that dark, very slightly like swollen corpse kind of flesh, and with the like dead eyes. It's not really part 7, there are bones everywhere, but he's very part 6 Jason physically. It has that steady thump, thump, thump of the later, like, fully undead, like juggernaut type Jasons, rather than the demented hillbilly Jasons from earlier in the series. So Johnny comes across very Jason-like in that sense as well. Also, that he has some intellectual um, underdevelopment, I guess. When he sees certain things, like when he sees the locket that I mentioned, he does act very childlike. He has this sort of hypnotized Jason kind of thinking about his mommy thing. So again, very Jason-like in that way. And of course, the kills themselves. I don't want to give too much away on the kills there, but anybody who knows the series will watch this and be like, oh yeah, that's totally something like a Jason style of kill. You'll get it when you see it. Like I say, it is shot here in Canada, so hooray for the Canadian artist who put the whole thing together. Always makes me a little happy to hear that. As far as the rating for this would go, piece as a whole, my system, by the way, is out of 5 dead tunas. So in this case, like I say, overall very good, just a couple of complaints. So I'm going to give it a 4 dead tunas out of 5. There you go. So, if you've seen this film and you would like to comment on anything that I've said or just comment on the film itself, by all means, go ahead and do so right there in the comment section. If this is the sort of thing that you enjoy, if you want to listen to more blabbing on about horror movies and horror geekery related things, go ahead and hit that like button there, hit the subscribe. Come on back. We'll see you next time. I've got a million gazillion movies floating around in my head I want to talk about. So tune in to the mortuary. Come and see me here, Morbid Tuna, the one and only. And I will see you creeps next time. Slash you later.